Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you the routine that helped me write 2000 words a day. But of course, this video is just going to be covering part 1, which is power hours. What are power hours? They are the hours where you are the most productive for any given activity. So of course, for this video, we'll be talking about writing. But it's different for each person, so I can't just tell you that, oh, I have my power hours between this time and you should try it too. I think it's gonna be different for every writer, and you should go and investigate it and try to experiment and find out what it is for yourself. Because it depends on your sleeping habits, your work obligations, your free time, your biology, so many factors. I'm sure you've heard of night owls and morning larks. There are also other possible variations that could affect when you are the most productive for writing. So why I started developing my routine by first discovering my power hours is because a routine is way easier to build when you know what time you need to build it around. Power hours are your energized time. They are not just time on the schedule, but they are the time whereby you're able to put in all your focus and energy into producing something that's valuable. And that's why I find it very, very important to find out what my power hours are so that I can defend it and build my routine around it. How do you find your power hours? I recommend experimenting and keeping a journal. You want to take note of two things. Firstly, how motivated you feel during that period of time. And secondly, which is actually the more important one, your actual productivity. How many words you're writing? Are you able to flow with your writing style and so on and so forth? The reason is because sometimes you might not feel motivated, but once you start and once you implement some of the tricks that I will share with you in future videos, you might actually be able to write a lot more during that period of time than you think you will. So give yourself a few weeks to try out some of these time slots that I'll recommend you, and you can see whether you're actually productive or not, regardless of how motivated you feel. Now, if you feel both motivated and you are actually productive, then good for you. You kind of struck the lottery in terms of finding your power hours. But for some of us, we might take a little bit of time to figure out what exactly are the periods of time where we are the most productive and the most able to produce a good piece of writing. So at the end of each week, you want to have a look at your journal and see if the timings you have chosen have been productive for you or not. And the reason why I feel like we need to give ourselves a few weeks is because it kind of takes time to know whether these hours are good for you, or whether it was just some random factor that kind of influenced your productivity for a given period of time. For instance, it could have been the food that you ate, it could have been some issue with your family or with your work in the morning and it ruined your mood for the rest of the day. It could have been a lot of other factors that might have affected your productivity during that allotted hour of writing. And so over a longer period of time, you will be able to find out if it's indeed your power hour or not. Some of the timings that you can try are, first of all, the mornings. You can start 1 to 3 hours after waking up, and the reason why mornings are so effective for most people is because of the cortisol awakening response, which you can find out more about just by googling it. So cortisol is a hormone that is associated with the fight or flight response, and in the morning our bodies tend to get flooded with this hormone because we are trying to wake up, we're trying to get energized, and we are trying to get started. So in the morning we are the most alert. Also, cortisol tends to be activated by visual exposure to sunlight. So you can simply look out your windows, look at the things that the sun is shining down upon. If you're living in places where there's not much sun, you might want to go downstairs and have a little bit of a walk, just get a little bit of exposure to sunlight, visual exposure especially, because that triggers the cortisol release. It might also be good to have breakfast before starting because it ramps up your metabolism and it signals to your body that, hey, the day is gonna get started and we want to be awake, we want to be energized so that we can focus on our writing. The second period of time that you can try for your power hour is the evenings. So in the evening, we have what we call the wakefulness maintenance zone. Once again, you can Google this to find out more. So sleep researchers have found out that right in the evening, that's when we have a second peak of alertness. The first one is the morning and the second one is the evening, and it lasts for around 2 to 3 hours. So this can be probably for most of us before our dinner, and usually if you're working a 9 to 5, just right after you knock off from your work. So for some people, they might find this the best time to get started writing before they start to feel really sleepy and they have to go to bed. For others, it might actually be a little bit later at night, maybe 1 or 2 hours right before bedtime. That's when they feel the most productive. So you will have to investigate, experiment, and find out for yourself when your power hours actually are. Now, for some of us, based on our busy schedules, we might not be able to find a 2 to 3 hour slot to do our writing. But that's no problem. You can just split it into half and half. Half in the morning and half in the evening. So maybe 1 to 1.5 hours in the morning and 1 to 1.5 hours in the evening. Now, when are my power hours? So my power hours are slightly unorthodox. It's actually right after lunch. So it's not any one of the time slots that I've recommended for most people. And the reason why it's kind of unusual is because right after lunch is when most people are the most sleepy. So I do not actually recommend it for you to try. But you never know, you might be similar to me and you might find that your writing power hours is actually right after lunch due to your schedule, due to whatever reason you have. So for me, how I make it easier for myself is that I eat lunch with a low glycemic index and with high protein to prevent sleepiness. And the reason is because eating carbohydrates tend to trigger the production of serotonin, which is also a hormone that kind of promotes sleepiness. So eating protein actually counteracts that as well. So you can try having a low GI diet and a high protein diet for lunch. If you believe that your power hours is similar to mine right after lunch, and that will kind of prevent that little bit of post-lunch sleepiness that most people experience. However, you also might find that it is a little bit tough to get started. So don't worry, it's quite easy to get over the hump. I actually just use a cup of coffee to stimulate myself mentally before I get started writing. And caffeine, once again, would be in a separate video, caffeine usage. Sometimes after writing for the first 60 to 90 minutes, you might find yourself a little bit lethargic. That's usually what happens to me. After 60 to 90 minutes of writing, I feel a little bit tired, I feel a little bit uninspired. So what I do is I use a little bit of light exercise, a specific breathing technique, and some eye exercises. It's actually very simple, just like looking out the window and so on and so forth, to restore my focus. So I'll go into these things a bit more in depth in a future video, maybe in the next part of this series. So to summarize, you want to start building your routine by first finding out what are your power hours, usually 2 to 3 hours of uninterrupted time. They can be split into 2. And you want to know when you're actually the most productive and not just when you feel the most motivated, or even when you don't feel motivated, are you actually productive? And you want to tailor this to your own routine because for everybody it's going to be unique. You can try the morning, the evening, or even split time slots, and then you can journal about it. If you're a maverick like me, you can try after lunch. Of course, do implement the tips that I've shared. I believe they will help you overcome post-lunch sleepiness and even maintain a little bit of that energy as you go throughout the entire period of time. That's all for today. I will cover other topics in the future. I hope this video has been very useful for you. If you enjoyed it, please do like and subscribe. If you want any specific tips, please drop it in the comments and I'll try to respond to it as soon as possible. Thank you for your time and I'll see you again.